Hello everyone, hope you're keeping well and I hope you are keeping better in your state of mind than the people we are going to be going through today. Because it's been a while since I have covered Extinction Rebellion, and to be honest, after the pandemic I thought they'd peter out a bit, but unfortunately I have underestimated their weapons grade autism. And honestly, I should have seen it coming, because for those of you that may have been watching this channel for a long time, you may know that I went through their handbook in an earlier video. And that book is a great instruction manual for exactly how to keep morale high and how to keep everyone pumped to keep acting like turbo autists. So, speaking of acting like turbo autists, let's get right into it. Extinction Rebellion announces wave of action against banks over fossil fuel investments. Group accuses banks of playing deadly role in the climate crisis. And yes, this was written in early April. So we're going to be covering the past month of silliness from Extinction Rebellion. Let's have some fun. Extinction Rebellion will focus its direct action protests on the banking sector over the coming weeks, after the group targeted the Bank of England and branches of high street banks across the country over the bank holiday weekend, as it orchestrates a wave of demonstrations designed to highlight banks' role in the climate and ecological crisis. A wing of the group, branded Money Rebellion, said the action aims to highlight how banks are among the institutions which they claim are prioritising short-sighted, short-term profits over long-term survival. I imagine the irony is completely lost on Extinction Rebellion there. The group said by continuing to fund climate and biodiversity destruction, also known as fossil fuels, our governments and banks have demonstrated they can be trusted with neither our money nor our lives. Of course, I would be absolutely astounded if most people in Extinction Rebellion did not have bank accounts with these particular banks. I mean, if Extinction Rebellion don't feel that big banks can be trusted with their money, I mean, surely they'd take their money out of the banks, but, you know, I don't know where all these people keep their personal finances, but if it's not in big banks, as I say, I will be absolutely astounded. But, as I read in the handbook, generally these are people trying to be very trendy, with both their opinions and their general virtue signalling. This is why, as we can see from the introductory image, they are just trying to throw, well, what is supposed to be oil onto the Bank of England. And as we will see later in the video, they target other big banks as well. But of course, they probably won't actually take any money out of their accounts from there and try and find a more independent bank. Because actually doing things that could help their cause is something that Extinction Rebellion are averse to. Anyway, let's hear their reasoning for this. These institutions have continued doing this, Extinction Rebellion said, in the very midst of a global pandemic because bailing out fossil fuel industries and lowering environmental standards were preferable to protecting ordinary citizens. The wave of action is designed to highlight the deadly role of banks in what is a suicidal economic system that by design financially incentivises harm to biodiversity, the climate and our future, the organisation said in a statement. Exactly what their alternative is at the moment I do not know, and I think they refrain from telling us. You see, Extinction Rebellion are one of those organisations that like to only point out the bad rather than put forward their own good, which is very annoying because I have absolutely nothing to compare this to, and all I can say is that the banks are not committing economic suicide by funding, quote-unquote, the oil industry, or the fossil industry, or whatever the hell you want to call it. Now yes, global warming may indeed cause some issues, but the thing is, the money that we have made since the Industrial Revolution, and we still keep making up till now, will be put forward into solutions to these problems that they may cause, such as making hydrogen cars, putting up sea defences, and investing in nuclear. I don't care how much Extinction Rebellion tell me that nuclear is terrible, they are wrong. The system is addicted to infinite growth. The more growth means more fossil fuels are used. Now obviously this is an absolutely moronic statement. They are using the economy as a whole to try and say the fossil fuel industry is the economy as a whole, which isn't the case at all. As other industries grow to try and take the place of fossil fuels, let's say, I don't know, nuclear power, you will find in fact that less fossil fuels have been used. And even if we look particularly at fossil fuels, let's say the worst one, coal, it is true that during the mid-20th century the coal industry was growing, and so more was being extracted and used. But oh, here comes along oil and here comes along gas in the late 20th century, which then starts to replace it. And the same thing is currently happening with other sources of electricity, whether they be renewable and useful, such as hydroelectric energy in Norway, or whether they're useless and a blot on the landscape, like wind power that we are seeing in pretty much every country. Ultimately, there is not one single solution for the actual fossil fuel industry if you see it as a massive problem, because ultimately economics is eventually going to kill it anyway, because most people do want cleaner energy, but they also want reliable energy. So as soon as nuclear power is up to the affordable point, you will start seeing it be rolled in as fossil fuels are rolled out. But again, I've read their handbook, and clearly Extinction Rebellion don't actually understand a damn thing about economics. Anyway, I stopped mid-sentence. This also means that more resource extraction, more deforestation, more consumption, more material throughput, and more waste. I don't know what the hell they mean by material throughput. Luckily, Google is my friend, and all it simply means is that the total amount of matter and energy involved in every stage of the quote-unquote economic cycle will be increased. Yeah, well, I mean, technology is just going to completely obliterate their prediction here. We already see smartphones, which, well, they're getting bigger now, but they used to be getting smaller. But they are getting a lot more powerful, which means you can actually fit more software in it to take the place of other things which do take more materials to make. So you're actually seeing a decrease in the use of materials, because not only is it cheaper overall to extract less material for more use, but it's also just made the digital camera completely obsolete, unless you're a professional photographer. It's made the separation of the iPod and mobile phone obsolete. At this point, even with Nintendo Switch technology, it could even get to the point where it makes laptops obsolete. The main issue at the moment really is battery life, but even that's being improved upon year on year. And as soon as quantum computers get in, the processing power of that will be absolutely unbelievable, to the point where, again, we can do more with less. It's like Extinction Rebellion think everywhere is the Industrial Revolution at all times, which obviously isn't the case, because majority of the British economy is a service industry, meaning that production doesn't really exist in those sectors. So I suppose welcome to another Haryan Gláeddyv video, where I tell you exactly why Extinction Rebellion are wrong for the exact same reason for the second year in a row. But it's always good to get a refresher. But anyway, I think we're going to get into the fun part of the video, because I can't stand going through their terrible arguments for over 8 minutes. So, not long after this announcement was made, you will see the following scenes at a HSBC bank on Canary Wharf. Yes, we appear to be unfortunately witnessing some sort of, I can't even say soy boy, and I don't even think I can just say they're hammering like girls, because I don't want to disrespect soy boys and girls like that. This is something else. Honestly, that hammering was the most limp-wristed thing I've ever seen. That's even less than soy can get you. But in terms of looking like a revolution, these people ought to be laughed at, hence I'm making this video, but even trying to laugh at them is just really hard, because I can only feel bad for them at this point. This pose that this person is putting up right now in their little Extinction Rebellion mask and little mallet actually looks like one of the worst things I think I've seen in my life. It's like a lesbian workman got lost on the way to the bank. So obviously the video goes on a bit, and again, it's just, what is this? This is just the worst revolution I've seen in my life. Oh, better broken windows than broken promises. It just doesn't inspire anyone that I can think of, apart from people that, quite frankly, at this point should have already been inspired to join Extinction Rebellion. And of course, as you've just seen on screen, they are arresting all these people, which good, because they are committing criminal damage. But unfortunately, this is exactly what they want. They are trying to fill up the system, essentially, by slowing down the government's ability to actually jail all of them. So maybe some sort of on-the-spot fine or something like that would be better, just to be like, right, you now owe the government money for the damage, or, you know, this property money for the damage that you just caused. Now please leave. And then if they don't leave, you can just keep piling upon the fine. I mean, that alone, I think, will make most of these people leave. And then the ones that don't, fine, put them in jail. But at least that's a lot less than you're probably going to get in the end. And unfortunately, this fad of smashing windows carried on throughout April. I mean, here's some more video footage of it. I mean, obviously, again, they started getting arrested after that, but why can't they just make smashing a window look cool? I would have thought it'd be really easy. And of course, there was even more going on later on in April. How do you make window smashing in a rebellion look like the most boring chore in the world? These people probably haven't seen real violence in their life. So that was the fad of window smashing. Luckily, most of these people got arrested, but I think the most interesting case actually comes from last year in April. And you'll see why I'm only bringing this up now very soon. But let's go through their propaganda first.
We're going to try and get into Crown Court, which necessitates £6,000 worth of property damage.
Just so we all know, and before we get into the video properly, that means this whole thing was premeditated, which is pretty important when it comes to a court of law, just making sure you know.
Shell are guilty for crimes against the future.
Shell has known for over 40 years the effects that CO2 and fossil fuels are having on the environment. They are stealing the future, literally, from our children.
Yes, they have indeed known for over 40 years what it does. That is why they also put money into renewable energy. And it's all just useless waffle. They committed crimes against the future, whatever the hell they mean by that. Obviously what they mean by that is the collapse of civilization, which they actually have no evidence for, outside of cherry-picking a few studies that essentially get laughed at these days. And if Extinction Rebellion was going on in the 70s, they'd be saying that they are putting us in an ice age, by the way. But as someone with a background in geology, I know when it comes to the future of the climate, life is generally going to be okay. You need more than putting emissions in the air to cause mass extinctions. And I think given humans' worldwide conservation projects, we are past causing many more extinctions. This is what we get now that we have most of the world being middle class. But anyway, do go on about telling me how Shell are the worst people on the planet, Mr. Extinction Rebellion person.
They have lobbied and broken the law in order for them to continue pumping out the fossil fuels.
I mean, this is another thing, and it's very reminiscent of that Jordan Peterson video that Armoured Skeptic did a while back, where they want to blame everything on the big corporations and, you know, the people providing a service that people are using. People want to use fossil fuels because it stops them from starving, gets them to their jobs, and ironically enough, most conservation projects will have a lot of petrol and diesel cars, 4x4s actually, that actually guzzle up a lot more fuel, because they are required, and we are not quite at the point where technology allows us to have long-lasting electric cars, and we haven't quite got hydrogen fuel right. And who are the people researching this? Well, a big one's Tesla. But another one, looking into renewable sources for electricity, power and transport, would also be Shell and BP and all the other big companies, because they realise that fossil fuels can't last forever, not because there isn't actually enough on Earth. We actually probably have enough on Earth for another couple of centuries. It's just not economically viable to dig it up yet. But they also know it is a good idea to diversify your assets. And if you are an energy company, you're going to diversify your energy sources. So eventually, in about 2 decades' time, maybe more, you're probably going to start seeing hydrogen pumps at Shell stations. And they are a hell of a lot better for the environment because the only thing they expel is dihydrogen monoxide. And when that gets in the atmosphere, it has a larger greenhouse effect than carbon dioxide. But luckily it has this tendency to also fall from the sky quite regularly. So luckily dihydrogen monoxide cycle isn't as deadly to the planet. At least that's what I will be telling Extinction Rebellion.
I agree with this action, but there you go.
The one thing that is going to help is ecocide laws, protecting nature in whatever way that is, nationally and internationally.
I'm sorry, is this on purpose or what? But why have they misspelled ecocide on their banner? Honestly, what a stupid thing to do. And I don't even know what they mean by ecocide. Obviously, they probably mean some sort of destruction to the environment should be illegal, but how far does that go? Because these people would put forward biofuels as one of their examples of a renewable resource. The unfortunate thing with biofuel is that you need to cut down a lot of trees to then grow the biomass which will be used for the biofuels. Meaning they're probably not going to be saving the rainforest as much as they think when it comes to what they are pushing. And the same goes for solar panels. You need a lot of space for that, and if you want it in a generally green country such as Britain, you're going to see a lot of places cut down for that as well, and same for wind power. So yeah, good one I suppose.
Shell News. They use their influence in government. They spend millions of pounds putting out false information. They are morally bankrupt.
Oh, irony. Honestly, if these people appreciated just how much of the policies they want are being pushed forward by the Conservative government, I don't think they'd actually see a need for this. And this is why I don't think they're actually doing this for moral reasons. I think they're basically doing this because they feel like they just want to be part of some revolution, whatever it may be. Because pretty much all of that was projection. And this is part of the reason why I just don't take Extinction Rebellion seriously.
We want to get ourselves in front of a jury to highlight not only the failure of the law, but the need for accountability by fossil fuel companies and by everyone who's currently not abiding by the IPCC Paris agreements, which our own government signed up to, but is still not doing enough about.
I mean, negative, 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 negative. We are one of the best countries. I don't think we're quite the best, but we are one of the best countries for reducing our carbon footprint on the planet, which is exactly what you want. The government even keep bringing forward their plan for net zero carbon emissions. Originally their plan was for 2050. I think by this point it's been brought back to 2035, which if they find a way for that I will be amazed at. The only actual way I can see that happening is if they build up a load of carbon dioxide catchers and then pump it underground, which actually is a real process we've been thinking about for a while. The main problem with that process is that it is monumentally expensive.
No jobs on a dead planet. No World Cup on a dead planet. No EastEnders on a dead planet.
Yeah, the biggest problem they have with this is that people just don't see the planet dying. You'll obviously get stats and David Attenborough coming up every now and then telling you exactly why too many people on the planet is terrible and it is causing other creatures to die. In fact, I think David Attenborough even referred to people as an invader on the planet, which, again, if you look through geological history, absolutely every species, therefore, is an intruder on the planet. But people aren't going to take them seriously when they can't see any of these things declining. The best option is to probably point out glaciers, and to an extent they actually have a point there. The problem is that that's the only point they really have. Most other ecosystems tend to be the same. We are seeing slightly more extreme weather events. The problem is with extreme weather events is that they are very anecdotal. You know, while we've been having some more hurricanes in some years, we've also been having less in others than the average. So you need to see that change over the course of about 2 or 3, maybe decades. Then maybe people will start taking you seriously, but at the moment, people haven't really seen a hurricane worse than Hurricane Katrina, and that was way back in the early 2000s. So as I keep saying, this is moral grandstanding with absolutely nothing to back it. Anyway, the rest of it's all kind of moral grandstanding and stuff that's just, quite frankly, getting boring now. So, let's skip to the end of the video where we get some actual information. Yes, these 6 morons were indeed arrested for criminal damage, because that's what you get for smashing windows and spray painting on them. I'd say for no good reason, but I mean, really, what is a good reason to randomly smash a window and spray paint on the side of a wall of a building? The answer is, of course, none. So if you're hoping for white pills on how that court case went, I unfortunately have some bad news for you. Extinction Rebellion jury acquits protesters despite judges' direction. The bastards got off. 6 Extinction Rebellion protesters have been cleared of causing criminal damage despite a jury being told by the judge there was no defence in law for their actions. Probably because there was no defence in law for their actions. Activists targeted Shell's London HQ, claiming the oil firm was directly contributing to climate change. It was part of a wider demonstration across the capital on the 15th of April 2019. Judge Gregory Perrins said that even if their actions were morally justified, that does not provide a lawful excuse. Southwark Crown Court had heard that each of the defendants deliberately sprayed graffiti or smashed windows at the Shell building in Belvedere Road, central London. Yeah, it blows the mind that they were acquitted. I mean, they literally filmed themselves and put out propaganda saying, look, we are trying to get to Crown Court here. We are literally going to cause criminal damage, at least £6,000 was it worth, of criminal damage to get to Crown Court. And then they basically said so that we can put the big, large oil companies on trial. Absolutely incredible. And guess what? Now that they've been acquitted, they're probably going to want to do it again. I would love to see the jury's reasoning behind this decision. I mean, after watching that whole propaganda video, I find these next few sentences incredibly difficult to understand. So, after deliberating for just over 7 hours, the jury of 7 women and 5 men cleared the defendants of all charges. Okay, let's be fair, that makes a bit of sense. Before reaching their verdicts, the juniors had asked to see a copy of the oath they took when they were sworn in. Okay. The 6 who represented themselves were also cleared of individual counts of having an article with intent to destroy or damage property. I mean, we've literally seen the propaganda video where we are told that was their intent. What is wrong with these jurors? They told the court they had targeted the Shell building because the company was directly contributing to the climate change, thereby causing a serious injury and death. Right. They argued their actions were necessary and proportionate response to the harm being caused. I mean, 7 women and 5 men believe that? Why do we have juries if they can be manipulated like that? I mean, seriously, how does it take 7 hours after being given all the evidence? I'd be absolutely beyond surprised if the propaganda video that we just watched was not shown in court. And after all the videos we saw of them deliberately smashing the glass windows and spraying the graffiti, after seeing all that still, it's like, oh no, just acquit them. And we've had no reasoning as to why. All we've been given is the verdict. I wouldn't be surprised if some of those people on the jury were Extinction Rebellion activists. So they would probably refuse to do nothing but acquit the people on trial. And so the other jurors were just like, whatever, fine, I just want to get out of here. Because, let's be fair, if you were with one of these people for over 7 hours, you'd probably want to kill yourself. And amazingly, some of the people in power are fully behind this decision and also think anyone from Extinction Rebellion put on trial is a waste of time. And this person is Peter Hain. Believe it or not, he was a Labour cabinet minister, but is now a Labour lord. And he said, putting Extinction Rebellion activists on trial isn't in the public interest, so let's stop. After the recent acquittal of climate activists by a Crown Court jury, it's clear public sentiment is on their side. Fuck public sentiment then. I think this is the first Guardian opinion piece I've put in an actual video in over a year, because obviously I just save them all for the end of the week when we do Laughing at the Guardian. But when it came to this article, given the subject matter and given just how out of this world retarded it is, I thought I'd do a quickie for you. In the face of resistance by juries, surely there is a strong case to halt all the pending trials of Extinction Rebellion activists. No, fuck you. With nearly 1,000 trials still waiting to be heard in the courts, 6 members of the group were recently acquitted at Southwark Crown Court in Extinction Rebellion's second trial by jury. They had been charged with criminal damage against the oil giant Shell, yet the jury decided that all 6 were not guilty, that despite the judge ruling that only one had any kind of defence in law. I just want to point out that that defence was that he thought that the people working at Shell would support his actions. And I wish I was joking about that, but that's what he honestly believed, apparently. For police, the prosecutors and judge, it was doubtless a perverse verdict, but the warning signs had been there. In Extinction Rebellion's first Crown Court trial in December 2019, in which the defendants also admitted their actions and pleaded not guilty, the jury stated they had only followed the judge's direction to convict with regret. Yes, it's unfortunate how many activists we have in our court system, and they were even involved with trying to stop Brexit. It appears that democracy only really matters when it agrees with you, Mr. Peter Hain. But there we go. It seems that the law is out of step with the public, and that there could be many more such perverse verdicts by rebellious juries. The 6 acquitted defendants took action outside Shell's London headquarters during the first mass protest in April 2019. They've like, well, we know what they did. Their action was reportedly designed to create more than £5,000 worth of damage to ensure the case would be escalated to the Crown Court and heard by a jury rather than in a magistrate's court where they would probably get convicted. Their hope was that on learning why they felt they had to break the law, a jury of their fellow citizens would reach the decision it did. It was a courageous and risky strategy, for they each faced a maximum 5-year prison sentence or a £10,000 fine. Well, just give them the £10,000 fine on the spot. Then allow them to have an appeal process, and for the love of God, apparently, don't have a goddamn jury for it. Which, to be fair, I don't think you can have a jury when you are appealing, but obviously at the same time you can't actually give a on-the-spot fine in the UK. But my God, if it's come to this, where we are at a point where we cannot convict criminals because some people are absolute idiots and will listen to emotional arguments over the actual letter of the law, I don't see the bloody point in them. I mean, my God, even this article has the emotional resonance they are trying to pull off. In the 2 years it took for the case to come to trial, there's been a major shift in public awareness about the scale of challenges we face from global heating and ecosystem collapse, not least as a result of Extinction Rebellion protests, as well as strikes by school students and increasingly desperate warnings from scientists and public figures such as David Attenborough. I absolutely love how he doesn't quote a scientist or any scientific research papers, but instead puts forward David Attenborough, who's known more for reporting on life on Earth rather than the actual climate science. He's a biologist, not a geologist or a climatologist. The 2-week Shell trial at Southwark was a case study in what can happen when environmental activists put their trust in the people. The defendants dismissed their lawyers and represented themselves, which allowed them to speak directly to the jury, explain the full facts about the climate crisis, and their reasons for taking the actions they did. Yes, I agree, they completely emotionally manipulated them. They guilted them, shamed them into this decision, rather than allowing them to be objective, which I think should be the case when it comes to a court decision. This is a tactic I know something about, having done the same thing in 1972 when facing imprisonment in an Old Bailey conspiracy trial for disrupting tours by apartheid South African sports teams. I was also acquitted, like the Shell defendants, on a majority jury verdict. Well, I don't know exactly what you did, but if you committed crimes, I do think you should be punished for them. I don't care what your moral position is. You can cause disruption to a point. That is the point of a protest. But you can't go around just being criminals, because all that does is give criminals good reason to be criminals and encourages it. That's why we punish criminals, to try and dissuade other people from carrying on with the same criminal acts, and it stops the people, once they are released from prison or have paid the fine, from doing it again. You are asking for an anarchist state in this case, but hey, at least Shell windows are broken, I guess. And the rest of the article is basically just him having a massive go at the Shell company and saying, oh, look, they're spending more money on getting out oil and extracting oil, while not spending as much on renewables and things like this. Well, the thing is that, yes, the oil is still the more profitable side of it, because people still keep driving cars, like you. So when it comes to slaving the planet, you are doing a pretty terrible job yourself. And honestly, I was hoping that this article, Extinction Rebellion co-founder Gail Bradbrook arrested for fraud and criminal damage, would be a bit of a white pill, because it's like, hey, look, even the co-founders are getting arrested and put through the system to get what they deserve. But from the looks of it, if she gets a jury, she's going to be let off scot-free. So what is the bloody point? What is the point of a justice system that is going to let people off from crimes that they have committed and that they say they intended to commit just because you agree with that ideology? It is the worst mistake you can make. What you are doing there is allowing a class of people to have preferential treatment, essentially. Now, if you're a climate activist, just go commit crimes. Go rob a bank. You'll get away with it. Oh, if we rob a bank, we are stealing money that can now not be put towards Shell. See, we were doing good. I say, nah, fuck that, have life in prison. And of course, force them to pay for all the criminal damages they caused, but it appears that I'm living in a fairy world hoping for that, so there we go. Sorry for the black pill, but these things are getting more and more ridiculous. And unfortunately, that's everything I've got for you today. So, as usual, thank you very much for watching, and until next time, goodbye.